I can't even believe it's Wednesday. Is it really? Somebody just needs to tell me exactly what's going on because I have not a clue how did it get to be Wednesday. So if you're just joining me, pardon but the fact that I'm racing to catch up with the week. If I sound a little bit out of it, then it's because I'm totally out of it. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Mhm. Uh, thank you so much for joining us. And so I ask that everyone just tune in. We do have something to talk about. Uh, we do have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about bullying in just a bit. And and so I have I'm telling you, sometimes you just have to be tuned in to what is really going on, because how this arose was because I went to a business place. I'm not going to say, but I probably should. It's Livonia Auto Care. Nice guy, Matt. He's a sweetheart out there. He said if you need your car, you can go to him, or I can give you my other guy up on Lasser and 11 Miles. So, my guy was telling me how much, and he began to tell me how much he was being, talk to me about bullying. About social media bullying and so on, and how it impacted his racing. So a few years ago, he and I had talked, and he wanted me to bring my truck to come down to the race meet to race. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that I grew up around racing, right? So in my hometown, it was not uncommon for us on a Sunday to gather at a race meet. And you've got to understand, in those days, they raced on what? Gravel roads with stick shift. It was no automatic cars, right? So it was gravel roads with stick shift. It was not blacktop. It was gravel road with stick shift. And they went around and around the bend until they completed however many laps and so on. And my mother was who introduced me to racing. So I developed an affection for racing, so much so that I began to watch NASCAR racing. So for a while, I grew up thinking I was going to be a NASCAR chick. I kid you not. I mean, I saw myself wearing jeans with heels, my shirt tucked in. And to this day, I still wear my rhinestone sunglasses. Like, if you ever see me, I have on big black rhinestone sunglasses, just still, apparently, at the back of my mind, still profiling and projecting this NASCAR chick, this NASCAR wife thing going on, right? So I just went to this mechanic because someone referred me to him, because the heater core in my SUV is a foreign car. So the heater core in it needed to be fixed. And someone told me he was the best at doing that. So 2 years ago, I went to him. Well, it turns out I had to go back to him this year. So 2 years ago, he was telling me about racing, and you should bring your car down. And he said, I'd love to take it for a spin out there. And I was terrified. I was like, first of all, they race on blacktop. So there's not much traction. I kid you not. It's the craziest thing, because in my days, we raced on gravel roads. So I think there's a lot of traction. And I think I used to like seeing the cars. I know you're all geeked out listening to me, right? Because you can't believe this part of my personality. But I used to like seeing when the cars dragged a little. You know, when you hit the brake and the clutch at the same time? You know that thing? And then you have the gear, right? And then when the car is moving off, the wheels spin out and the gravel and everything is fine. Oh my gosh. Take me to a race car meet any day of the week. So I was kind of geeked. At first I was kind of really curious, but then I'm like, it's blacktop, It doesn't have much traction. And I'm like, maybe that's why. I've only been to one NASCAR meet in Daytona, Florida. So I'm like, I liked it because it's something but I wasn't near the pits. But it's something when you're in the stands and the cars are going around. It's quite the thing. It's an adrenaline rush like anything else. So fast forward 2 years later, I had to go to see him again. So I began to talk to him. So I'm like, well, how is racing going? And that's when he began to talk to me about why, why he had kind of backed off it a little bit, because nowadays people don't know how to take things in stride, and people don't know how to acknowledge things happening. And so they will cyberbully you. He didn't say cyberbully. He said, but they'll put it out on social media if you win a race and if you drive. Now, racing is what it is. The nature of car racing is that you use your skills to get in front of the person, right? For you and I, driving down 696, I-75, for those of us in Metro Detroit, I-94, the Lodge, the M10, what's the other one? The M39, I-275, I-96, right? I'm thinking of all the major freeways around. That is not race car driving. So if you're in your home city, in your hometown, driving down the regular freeways, that's not an opportunity to display your want to be race car skills. Unlike most motorists who think that their car, the exact same model as your car, is the fastest one, because apparently when they manufactured it just for you, knowing you were going to race down I-75. Anyway, I digress. So you're in a race car meet. The nature of that game is what? Aggression, right? And the nature of that game is to be able to look at what people are doing, right? And to look at why, to get yourself in front of the next person using your skills. So he said, he was racing someone, and when he described the maneuver, it didn't sound aggressive to me. Me being accustomed to being race carred on I-696, both directions, east and west, by pickup truck drivers and people driving small cars, right? People driving cars who perhaps shouldn't be driving on the freeway, but that's okay. That's the police's job. Anyway, and tractor trailers. So people like to race on 696. So you're doing the speed limit of 70 and they're zipping past you. So they're doing what, 85, 90? Okay, keep driving, right? But so to me, that's not the forum in which you race car, right? So in his experience, he is racing on a speedway, a closed course. You ever seen those ads on TV? Don't try this unless you're on a closed course. Okay, well, so he's racing on a closed course where the only cars there are all race cars, and they're all driving aggressively. And yet he said someone got so mad that he outmaneuvered them, that they posted a picture to social media to say, you shouldn't have done this. But he wanted to win the race. And within the context of racing, that's kind of what is required, right? So when he described it to me, it made me, at first I wasn't even paying attention. I was just being polite, listening to it. But then something about the conversation grabbed me. And I listened to it and I said to myself, this is not the second time that someone has brought this to my attention in as little as maybe 2 weeks, where someone brought to my attention that that there is some concern about racing. So I was, I said not racing, but about bullying within the context of social media, and using social media to not just advance their cause, but to use social media to kind of influence someone else's behavior. And I listened to him, and he said, that's why, he said, nothing is fine anymore. Politically correct, sometimes those are code words for people who are unnecessarily aggressive. But as I listened to him, I realized that what he was saying is nothing is fun anymore. In the world that we live in today, there are very few opportunities for us to, especially for men, to exert themselves. And men tend to gather in groups. So they gather in a group, they go down to the bar, they're at the sports bar, they're watching their game, and they're gathered there, and they're, hey, ho, whatever. And that's how they expend their energy, right? And how their maleness. I think sometimes we need to leave people alone. I think we have unnecessarily interfered too much. So now, if it is not going your way, you're going to be mad. And so you are going to take a picture because you didn't win the game. So I said to him, know, it's the way things are today. I read somewhere recently that people are not enrolling their boys in football or baseball or basketball because some mothers fear that their children are unnecessarily exposed to too much violence. And it wasn't so much about head injuries, especially with football, concussion arising from not wearing a helmet or whatever, or hitting their heads unnecessarily, but more so about just the contact sport, the nature of the sport. And he and I looked at each other and we're like, so where's the fun? We both said at the same time, where is the fun? And suddenly we realized that the strictures of modern conventions have so imposed on activities that normally are reserved for sportsmanlike behavior, that now, where are people going to get their aggression out? So I said to him, well, in today's world, boys, and he said, I get it. I have nephews. He said, I know. They just sit home and play video games on their phones or their Xbox or whatever they use. And I said, and that accounts for why people have very little communication skills, because we don't interact. But as I left there, the thought occurred to me that I have not talked about bullying within that context. And I haven't talked about it from bullying within the context of me. So I'm inserting myself here, right? Within the context of me superimposing my ideas of what your life should be and trying to influence your way of life, not by making a suggestion, not by delivering it in a way that is conventionally accepted as, polite and cheerful, or polite and courteous rather, but more, you should do this, and if you don't do this, you're not on my team. Do you see what I'm saying? So in a way, I felt like social media has done a pretty good job of doing this. In fact, we've seen this over the years where children have reported being killing themselves, and prior to their deaths, prior to them taking their lives, they will say, well, I was bullied at school. And some children have gone as far as saying, because I was bullied at school, I don't want to go to school anymore. We have seen where cyberbullying has influenced someone else's behavior, where people have reacted. Someone takes a picture of somebody and posts it on social media, then it goes viral. Children are very good at stuff going viral. I don't know how they do it. Can they tell us how to do it? I mean, they will just put it in a loop, like in a group text message of 100 people, and 100 people start talking about it, and all of a sudden it's gone crazy. They'll take a picture and say, call somebody out a name, or they'll post a picture that is not necessarily a good picture of someone, probably doing something that they would normally do in public, but do in private. And so when I look at it, I said, you know what, this conversation needs to happen. I need to talk about it because we need to address it. And the reason we need to address it, we need to place things in the borders and within the parameters of where they occur. For instance, let's just put it this way. If you're playing a contact sport like football, there is unnecessary roughness, but it is within the parameters of the game. Now, people like myself are forever going to say when I was growing up, because today is a whole different ball game. People today are very sensitive. They're very touchy-feely. Like, don't touch me. I don't like when people touch me, because when you touch me, I hurt. And so people today are very aghast and askance. There's some good things about the progress we have made socially in terms of recognizing that bullying exists, for instance, in the workplace. But there are also some things that I think we might have gone overboard. And I think social media bullying and the bullying has always, as a standalone by itself, has always been to influence someone else's behavior by pushing them and forcing them, coercion and force to do it. We got to be careful with that, because there's all kinds of bullying. Today, bullying used to be one-on-one. Anybody ever been bullied in school? That was me. There was this big, tall guy. He pushed me around, and he used to pull my pigtails. He used to pull my ponytails all the time. I kid you not. I had to react one day. Don't ask how, but let the record stand that I did react. Okay? and, and I had to react to defend myself. And he was big and tall, and I was this little kid, and he just like pulling my ponytails. And he used to push and shove and so on in an effort to get me to do what he wanted me to do, which was what I don't know, whatever that was, right? We also experience bullying in relationships where we don't want to talk about that, where one partner tries to force another partner to do something against their will. That's also bullying. There's bullying in domestic relationships between siblings, right? And between parent and child. There's that kind of bullying. There's bullying in the workplace where someone in authority uses their position of authority and influence to try to influence or force someone to do something that they either can't do or cannot execute at this time. And then, of course, the granddaddy of them all in today's world is what? Cyberbullying. There's bullying involved in sexual assault, because basically that's what sexual assault is, right? It's someone superimposing what they want. They're forcing you to a pattern and a way of behavior that you don't want to, that you don't agree with. That's basically all that it is. So somebody wants me to do something that I don't want to agree with, but they're forcing me to do it. So let's say you, my listener, you were to call me, but you say, hey, Harriet, I want to talk about so-and-so. Let's say you want to talk about how blue the sky is. And I'm like, yeah, we can talk about that. We can talk about how blue the sky is all day. You know, the sky's blue this day, that way. Then you're not just courteously saying, maybe you should talk about it, but you are forcing me to, well, if you don't talk about it, then I won't listen to your show again. Yeah, that's self-bullying. That's bullying. I would probably what? Hang up the phone. Because to me, you have crossed the lines of propriety now. You have crossed the lines over into forcing me or compelling me to do something that I don't want to do. Right? So I feel like we have to draw the line. Society, at some point, we had to draw the line somewhere. Now, one of the things, I love social media. I don't know why they call it social media. As far as I'm concerned, it's media, right? Because it gives you a chance to engage with people whom you normally would not have access to. And let's just face it, traditional print media have gone, right? Now we have electronic media that is digital media in live time. Like you're listening to me through digital media. You're listening to me either through a recorded podcast. Hopefully you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or Google, or wherever your favorite podcast platform is. That's where you're listening to me, right? You're also listening to me on Blog Talk Radio, right? So that's now electronic digital media. And if you're streaming me, you're probably watching me through YouTube, and sometimes I stream through Twitter or Facebook. That is now media, modern media, as it is today. My daughter asked me this question last night. She's 17, so she's like, Mom, what do you think media will be like? She said, what do you think will be the next great thing for humankind? And I'm like, I think we're saturated at this point. I said, we're saturated. It's going to take a few years, because what we're doing now is fine-tuning what we have as media and as digital media. But we're only going to become more enmeshed and involved because the generations who are being born now, that's all they know. So the alpha generation, the people who are 10 and under, this is all they know. All they know is digital and electronic media. They don't know newspapers, and they don't know books. They know tablets to swipe on a tablet and on a phone, right? So our world has changed. So how do we communicate? The ways in which we communicate our feelings, our angst, right? The ways in which we tell others how we feel about them becomes even more important. Well, one of the ways that people do that is through posting a picture on a social media page and telling you that you shouldn't have passed them because they don't agree with your maneuver, even though in the sport that you're in, the maneuver is just the same. It's no different. That's cyberbullying. That's cyberbullying, right? It's just like someone took a picture of me, and I don't like the picture. I am in the picture, so I own it. So you took it, but because I'm in the picture, I have rights to that picture. You need my permission to post that picture, but you post it anyhow. So I say, please take that picture down. and you refuse to take it down because you insist that you use it. So the picture, whatever reasons I may not like it, maybe it's unflattering, maybe it's not representative of what I was doing at the time, whatever the reason was. The fact that I'm asking you to take it down and I am in the picture and your refusal to do it says what? That is what? Bullying. That's you using your position of influence or authority to push me into doing something I don't want to do. Let's examine workplace bullying. Let's look at that for just a second. Ironically, I had, to be honest with you, I should have done this show yesterday. That was the day I planned to do the show. I should have done it. But as I was getting ready to come on air, sex tourism was the thing I said, maybe I should talk about that today and schedule bullying for the next day. So I had scheduled, so this has in no way is reflective of any current situation that is going on. Let me put that out there. This was pre-scheduled. I had already tagged it and put it out. So now that we're here, though, let's talk about what happens when people bully another person. I have found that bullies have certain characteristics, irrespective of age, irrespective of gender, right? Irrespective of ethnicity, race, bullies are the same. The point of a bully is to get you to do what they want you to do when you don't want to do it. So in the place of workplace bullying, it's always the bully who uses their position of authority. Some bullies take it by force. Like in my situation, when I was a kid, the guy was bigger than me. So what was he doing? He was using his position of force, right? Because he was taller, he had more force, more power. So he used that to try to force me and compel me to do something that I couldn't do or I wasn't prepared to do at the time. That's bullying, right? Standard. That's just standard issue textbook all day, every day. Right. So in workplace bullying, well, how is that defined? Well, the person who is doing the bullying is usually someone who is in position of authority. If they're not, like it's the guy over in the next cubicle, somehow he is bullying you into turning your radio down. Well, if he's asking you to turn your radio down, turn the down radio down. Maybe it's too high. It's too high. Maybe you have it turned up too low. Then turn it down, right? So he's not necessarily bullying you. It becomes bullying when he's forcing you to do something that you should not be doing. That's the difference, right? That's the difference. Now, if he is in a position, though, of authority, he's your supervisor or team leader or manager, director, vice president, and he's using his position, then it becomes a whole other matter. Now it becomes a legal matter, right? And bullying does happen. Bullying takes place in all kinds of environments, right? People trying to make you subscribe or ascribe to a certain pattern of behavior that the group is doing, but that does not fit you, or you are not able to carry it out exactly the way they want it to, but they want you to do it anyhow. And the ways in which they enforce it, sometimes it's not just, have you ever heard the term, it's not what you say, but how you say it, right? Sometimes it's not what you say, but how you say it. I have found that people who engage in bullying as a way of life have certain terminologies and a certain personality presence around them. Oh my God, I'm sneezing. It is so true. It is unbelievable. Oh, excuse me, right? And so what happens, I'm here and I have a tissue in my hand, so I'm not putting germs out on people. But what happens is that people invariably sometimes choose to be a bully. And especially, and here's the thing with the bully, especially in group semantics, right? In group discussions and group spaces, what you find happening more. So the way they choose what comes with the role and to get people to do what they want to do is by bullying them. There are some people who this is just the way they communicate. And bullying doesn't mean someone necessarily raising their voice at you. It's not the raising of the voice. It's not saying, hey, come over here and do this. That's not the bullying part. The bullying is the compelling you and forcing you to do it, even when it's not required to do so. That's the bullying, right? You have to be careful with that. So what about bullying relationships? You a girl, you're a boy, he's a girl, and you are in a relationship and your partner is trying to get you to do something you're absolutely not comfortable with. In every relationship, there's someone who holds the power. Whether that power comes through economics, like the person with the most money has the power, or whether the person who has the most whatever has the power. But somebody in that relationship is the one with the power. The person who has the power has to say, so whatever they say tends to go, right? Okay, we accept that. That's part of life, right? Isn't that life? That's life, right? Okay, so the person has that. And so what they choose to do is by compelling you to do things that you really don't want to do. Don't ask what those could be. It could be anything. They might want you to do drugs and you're not accustomed to doing drugs, but they make you feel that you're not part of the relationship if you don't subscribe to this pattern of behavior. The same is true for workplace bullying. The same is true for cyberbullying, because bullying is just bullying. You see what I'm saying? So they're compelling you to do it. And if you don't do it, you're not a team player. You're not being part of the group. And as a group, this is what we do. It's this new word today. They don't say team player anymore. They don't say that group activities anymore. What do they say? They say what? Community. The rules of our community. It's like our good friends over at Facebook like to tell the rest of the world that you can. Have you ever seen that? People say, I'm blocked on Facebook. I can't post anything. And when you go and look why they're blocked, they really didn't bully anybody. They just said something. And Facebook will say, well, this violates the rules of our community. And I'm like, Russia interfering in the 2016 elections did not violate the rules of our community. And on politicians is not influencing. And you posting pictures of other people and revenge porn is not influencing the rules of the community. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's almost as if people pick and choose their battles. They pick and choose what they want to describe as bullying. And when it comes to them, they're not the ones who are bullying. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever had contact with a bully? And when you confront them and say, you know something, I don't like the way you speak to me. I don't like what you have just said to me because it's making me uncomfortable. All of a sudden, the bully starts backing off. That's not what I meant to say. And I didn't mean that. My daughter refers to it as codifying. They use code words. They ascribe a certain. It's just like implicit bias. Everybody knows what implicit bias is. Maybe I'll do a show on it someday. But implicit bias is the understated, implied racism that exists, not just in context, but that is applicable to a broad cross section of people of color, right? Okay, so in implicit bias, what you find sometimes happening is people use words that are typically associated with a certain one group or another. So they will use words, and we refer to that as codifying because you're using certain code words to explain and extrapolate an idea and communicate a certain idea. I kid you not, these things happen. I am forever fascinated by the vagaries in relationships. I'm forever fascinated by the ways in which we human beings choose to communicate one another and beat up on one another. We do that so very well. Right? I kid you not. Yesterday I was talking about sex tourism, so go listen to that podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Harriet Kemick with Down to Earth. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. Welcome back. And so, hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Harriet Kemick with Down to Earth. So yesterday I was listening to sex tourism and, I try to talk about it and blah, blah, blah. I kid you not. And I was telling it contextually within the context of my experience that, I first became aware of it about 8 or 9 to 10 years ago when an author reached out to me. At the time, I was broadcasting through Blog Talk Radio and on radio in Detroit. And someone reached out to me, an author who had written a book about sex tourism and sex trafficking in Cambodia. So I obviously wasn't talking about something that I don't know about. But here's the person trying to get me to not talk about it. So I'm like, did it kind of grind your corns or something? You know what I mean? Or what are you trying to say? Well, just not saying it all. You know, you can't just go, man, Eddie. I'm like, is it really? Did I? Anyway, do you see what I'm saying? And especially for us as women, you know, we more than you guys do. Sometimes I envy men. I'm like, it's a gift to be born a man. Like, seriously, I don't know why anybody born a man wants to change. It's a gift to be born a man. Do you guys realize that every time you get dressed to leave your house, you never have to worry about being sexually assaulted? You never have to wonder if you'll be safe. You never have to wonder if your purse will be snatched, no matter where you're going. And sometimes we're just so careless. You know, you're coming from the gym, you have a gym bag, a purse, you know, with your phone, and you just throw your stuff in the car and you start driving. You never, as men, you never have to worry about that, because you know what? No other man is really going to try to attack you. But as women, that's a constancy. We have to remind ourselves to be safe. We have to practice safety in numbers. We have to practice being on the phone with someone while you are driving, especially if you're driving at night. It's something I tell my daughters, and it's something that I don't do. If I'm driving anywhere at night, you best believe I'm on the phone talking to someone, just in case something happens on the road. Because as a woman, you become aware that what? You are vulnerable. You're vulnerable to being attacked because of perception that you are the weaker sex, that the fact that you are perhaps not able to fight off an attacker or so on. So those things, to be honest with you, those are things that are somehow have been inculcated and ingrained in us as women from you were born. So it's like second nature to double check your doors. You know, sometimes you're like, did you really pull up the door? Men just go in the house and just, hey, shut the door and walk in, like, oh, dare is going to come in here behind me kind of thing. We women are like, did you lock the door? Did you turn the alarm on? You know what I mean? Because we experience bullying far more than men. And sometimes when we're talking about bullying, you guys are looking at us like, what's that? What's she talking about? You know, like, what does that even mean? Because you have no relatability, because it perhaps has never happened to you. Or for some men, they won't say what has happened to them. Like, there are men who were sexually assaulted when they were kids, either by a coach or some influential person in their peer group around them, you know, in their parent circle, or maybe it was somebody at school or somebody at church, but they won't talk about it. So they don't acknowledge that it exists, because they feel if they acknowledge it, it's going to imply that they are weaker and that they were powerless, right? And to some extent, I understand, but by not saying it, what you're doing, you're deriding the empowerment and the power that comes from saying this is true. This does happen, even to men. A few years ago, I was somewhere speaking about violence, and one of the speakers on the forum was someone who had spent some time around children in juvenile facilities. And he wasn't formally employed, but he provides a service where he goes into juvenile facilities around Detroit and speaks to young men. And he said something that I had to pull him aside afterwards to ask about. He said that young men, when they enter the juvenile system, whatever their altercation or whatever caused them to enter, they're different when they're on their way out. Because when they exit, they're 19 or closer to the adult age, the age of maturity or the age of majority. He said they're totally different. They have changed. And I said, well, what do you think were the contributing causes? Because, you know, I'm eternally curious. And he said bullying. He said while they're inside, they're being bullied by others and forced to do things, forced to do things they don't want to do, but have to do. So when they come out, they have already been what? Socialized into thinking it is normal behavior. So now this normal, why you see so many 22, 23, 24, 26-year-old young men getting shot and actively attacking others. Sad commentary on our society. We have created a normative type of behavior that was not normal. Years ago, bullying might have been something that, shucks, does it really happen? Do you even think someone bullied you? You know, people made fun of someone who came forward. Now we had to turn it around because it went too excessive. When people in a schoolyard, because they used to do that to me, they put me in a circle, ring a roses, a pocket full of posies, whatever, right? And I was the brown girl in the ring. So I was the light skinned one in the group all the time, right? So they would put me in a ring and they would pick on me. They would talk about my skin color, they'd talk about my teeth. You have to see me to understand this, right? And they would talk about my clothing, whatever they could find to talk about. And so there I was being bullied, right? And the truth about the matter is that they were bullying me. And I would just stand there. After a while, I fought back. You know how I fought back? I would just fight back. I was the smartest. And I would just say, well, you need me for something. You're going to need me to help you write a paper. You're going to need me to help you argue a point. I kid you not. I kid you not. These things happen, right? In today's world, they pick on people for how they look. So you might be the only fat one in the group. If you're fat, if you're too skinny, if your hair is not long enough, your hair is too long. If your skin is too white, it's not white enough. It's too brown, it's not brown. It's not black, it's too black. Your teeth this, your teeth that. Your eye color this, your eye color that. You this, you that. You don't do this, you don't do that. You're not part of the group. And so they form this herd mentality to try to get you to do what they want you to do. You have to be real careful with that, right? When those things happen, you need to confront the bully. Because the only way the bully is going to stand down is when you stand up to him and stand in front of him. As long as you hide in the shadows, he's never going to stop. Because the bully's power comes from you. You are feeding him. As long as you stay behind and try to stay out of his way and try not to be a part of it. No. So I learned to put my hands on my hips real early. And say, you're going to need me for something because I'm the spelling bee champion. In those days, I was a walking lexicon. I mean, I could read, I could spell words like you wouldn't believe. And I beat them every time. I beat them at spelling bee. Oh, yes, I did. You see what I'm saying? That was how I got back. Because I couldn't understand. And I was too young. I was a kid. I couldn't understand why it was that I was being subjected to this. I'm just telling you how it was, right? I couldn't change my skin color. They made fun of the color of my skin. They used to tell me stuff like, well, you can't go back to Africa. So if there's a war, you can't go to England because you're not white enough to go to England. You're not black enough to go to Africa. So if there's a war, they're going to drop you off in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and the sharks are going to eat you. They said it over and over. So it's not like Ring a Roses. They play a game around you and say it. They said it over and over again. That was bullying. And some of these folks are still alive today. Yes, they are. So they're hopefully listening. So now they know. They probably do know because we're all grown now. So they recognize that that behavior was unacceptable. Do I speak to them? Yeah. Like, okay, hey. It doesn't mean we're going to be friends now and sit down and have a drink, right? But do you see what I'm saying, right? So to an impressionable young mind, what if I internalize self-hatred based on the things they described about me? And so you would go home and you would tell your friends and family or tell your family members, and they might not do anything about it. So you grow up believing the lies that have been perpetrated by the bully. Do you see what I'm saying? So the bully has a twofold problem. He's psychologically damaging you. And if at all possible, he's going to try to force you physically to do what he wants. It's only a matter of time before he goes there. So what he engages in is a game of psychological warfare. You are not part of the team if you're not like this. If you want to be part of my team, you have to be like this. There is no requirement for you to do this. It's not required for the job at hand. It's not required by the racing protocols. It's not required by the social group you're in at school. But the bully comes up with this idea. He picks on a vulnerable point and uses your vulnerability to chastise you and force you and compel you to do what he wants to do. I told you that my vulnerability was my ponytails. My mother couldn't comb my hair properly, so I had these ponytails. Well, I guess the bully picked up on the fact that maybe I was uncomfortable with it. So he kept doing what? Pulling my ponytails all the time. It hurt. right? And would make fun of it, right? What did he do? He picked up on my vulnerability. So to me, bullies are sort of sociopathic because they become what you need them to be, right? They're also psychopaths because guess what? They have no remorse. They show no remorse whatsoever. Because what do they do after they have made you uncomfortable or after everybody has joined in the fun? They sit back and laugh. So they're both a sociopath and a psychopath because now they have no remorse and they become what the group wants them to be, who is a pushover. There are many famous examples of bullies. I mean, a lot of people who are in leadership today, a lot of people especially in work environments, don't realize how much they sound and act like a bully. In fact, they probably don't think so. If you were to suggest it, who, me? A bully? No way. I don't think so. But on closer examination of the facts, you will realize that they are. Even in some social groups that we join, some of us, we're part of different groups, we're part of sororities, fraternities, and all kinds of stuff, right? And sometimes you just join what do you call that? A pyramid group, another pyramid scheme. I don't mind those things. I think those are great ways to meet people and network with other people. You may never make any money. You may waste your money buying something, but it does work as a tool and as a form of networking. It introduces you to a wide variety of people. You go to you take your kids to a sport, right? If you notice that there are fewer and fewer children and parents at sporting events. Have you guys noticed that? There are fewer and fewer. The children are not being driven and driven that way because the parents, either because of bullying, but the parents are also like, it's a contact sport and I don't like how the coach talks to my kid and I don't like how the other kids talk to my kids, right? So what I'm saying is we have to be so mindful of the myriad ways in which it takes place and the many forms that it takes on. It also seems to take on the form sometimes, even in a religious setting. Have you guys ever thought about that? Look at what happened in the Catholic Church, where the person who was violated, guess what they did? They went and complained, and the person whom they complained to made fun of it or didn't treat it. They wanted to direct it that way. No, I don't think Father John was trying to touch you. I think Father John might have wanted to communicate his love of Christ to you. Seriously, when he was pushing this young boy down and telling him, take the holy water or whatever they say, right? And God will love you even more. I am just saying, right? I'm just saying, people. I'm just saying, right? So what happens is, and you're all just like laughing at me because we all can relate at some point, right? We all can relate to some form of bullying or other. And if you really examine it, most of us have been exposed to bullying at one point or another in our lives. You know how you're going to know that it happened to you? Is by examining yourself and your reaction to certain events. That is going to tell you why you are the way you are. Is perhaps because someone at some point in your life might have made you felt like, exactly, right? Somebody somewhere influenced you, forced you into doing things. Some people are even bullied into committing crimes. Well, you're not part of the group. And if you don't do this, I'm going to do this to your family. And if you don't do this, you're not part of my group. And I thought you said you were my ride or die. People are bullied. There are plenty of people. My daughter says it like this. There are plenty of people in jail who are innocent. And she's saying it tongue in cheek. She's like, a lot of people in jail keep saying that they're innocent. They never did anything. And when you listen to the facts, sometimes you realize that they were in a group activity and somebody forced them to participate in activities. It's why we have to listen to our children, because sometimes our children are bullied into what? They're bullied into doing things. They're bullied into doing drugs. They're bullied into having sex. You have your 12-year-old, in middle school, 13-year-old in middle school, And you discover that they're engaging in sexual activity because everyone else in the group was doing it, and they didn't feel like they were part of the group if they didn't do it. Everyone else was doing drugs and they didn't feel like they were part of the group. They were bullied into doing drugs. And you and I, the parents, are sitting on the sidelines like, whoa, what happened here? Right? And so we have to be careful. We have to take steps to minimize and mitigate bullying. By sometimes you have to sort of assert yourself. When you find yourself in a group and people want you to act like a herd mentality, you really have to try to figure out, is this something that I want to be a part of? If this is a voluntary exercise, is this something that I necessarily want to be a part of? And if it makes you uncomfortable, then you leave. If you're in a workplace setting, you probably need to address that with your human resources department. What are the guidelines and protocols for behavior in this setting? Ask that question. And if it continues, well, I'm experiencing a form of bullying. I feel as if I'm bullying because I don't conform to this, or I don't. Let them define it and describe specifically the steps that have happened. Be very specific. If bullying is part of your intimate relationship, you might want to extricate yourself from that. You might want to look into, is this a healthy environment for me to thrive in? Is this a relationship that is going to build me, make me, and help me to thrive? And if you're in part of some sort of social group and bullying is a part of it, it's time to extricate yourself and move away from it. Do you really need to be a part of them? You really think that identifying with those group of people is part of it? Perhaps not, right? Interesting, isn't it? So for more information about what we do me a favor, go to my website, harrietkamak.com. And if you're listening to this podcast, I thank you sincerely for listening. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Have you really subscribed to our podcast channel, right? Subscribe to our channel. You either download the app, Spotify. If you're on iPhones, it's obviously Apple Podcast, right? It's just that little purple thing with the sound waves going off it, right? And if you're in you have an Android device, then of course you download from the Google Play Store, Google Podcasts. It has some little lines running through it. It's kind of cool looking. You do that as well as other podcast platforms. There's Overcast, there's Pocket Casts, there's Breaker, whatever platform you're listening to me to. I thank you so very much for participating in our discussion. And if you're ever in the Michigan area, I travel to speak, so invite me to your next event. You can go to harrietkamak.com to find out more information about me and the subjects that I speak on. Of course, you can find me on Google. It's always an easy landing page because Google will tell you what I do. They'll tell you who I am, what I do, and they'll tell you where my books are. And of course, go to Amazon.com and buy some of my books. Thank you so much for listening. It has been my pleasure to be here. And stay tuned. We'll have more information on bullying as the weeks and days and weeks come back. We're going to talk to people who have been bullied, and they're going to share their experience with us on what it takes, what it felt like to walk around in their own skin and what it looks like. Oh, kind of icky and stuff like that. I thank you so much for listening. I gotta go. It's time to go, right? It's time to go. Thank you so much for listening, and make sure you come back and listen to us on Down to Earth. This is Harriet Kamak. Thanks so much, everybody. Be blessed. Hey, thank you so much.